Hello, and welcome back to Cozy with Chelsea. I am Chelsea, your host. And today on the podcast, we have Antoinette. Antoinette is a former tech CEO, 11-year U.S. Army veteran, and air assault qualified expert field medic. And just over a decade ago, Antoinette relied on a walker, a service dog named Phoebe, and a full-time caregiver after surviving traumatic brain and spine injuries and PTSD. Today, she's a sponsored adventure sportswoman, outdoor industry influencer, motivational speaker, and freelance writer. She's the founder of the American Adventure Sports Club nonprofit and author of the upcoming book, 4 Hours to Live, A Soldier's Journey to Adoption, Assault, and Advocacy. She's traded her walker for a life of adventure in the Northwoods, where she lives with her family and semi-retired Phoebe, stewarding the forest and river around their homestead. She is passionate about showing others how outdoor recreation sits at the intersection of health, wellness, stewardship, and adventure, and how anyone can create their own new normal and live their biggest life. I can't wait to hear about your story and all the wisdom that you have to share. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Chelsea. Thanks so much for having me and for joining me here in my cabin in the North Woods.
Yeah. Of course. I went over your story a little bit, of course, in the intro, but I would love to hear more about it from you and what sounds like a large transformation looked like for you.
Yeah, so I got injured in the Army. I was rappelling down a mountain, preparing to give first aid to someone, and the conditions that injured him also injured me. I had to use a walker, service dog, and full-time caregiver. And I came to a point where one day I didn't think I would make it until morning. And so I wasn't afraid about it. I just thank God for the life I had led because, comparatively, I'd had a very good life. And I was prepared to move to my next existence. Even my dog was confirming for me, because she wouldn't leave my side, that she was very worried about me. And I did say, but God, if I make it until one more day, give me one more day, I'll figure out why I'm so sick and I'll turn around and help other people. The very next morning, for the first time in 18 months, I could get out of bed on my own, grab my walker, and start my day. And that was just a miracle in and of itself. But what I realized that day is that I needed to get back to being an outdoors person, a rural person, and address my health and wellness from a more natural perspective. Of course, using integrative medicine, conventional medicine, along with natural medicine. But I really needed to just reconnect to nature for my own good health.
I completely understand wanting to pursue maybe some natural alternatives to healing. I mean, I know obviously you're living a rural life. So tell me about that and what that looks like and how that helped with your healing.
Well, it was incremental. Every journey begins with a first step. And in my new normal big life process, I like to call it, the same process I use to restore my mental health, physical health, emotional health, I use to create this environment. So living here, this is my actual cabin in the woods. And it's what I envisioned that first day out of my sick bed. And we've been able to create that. So it started with just a simple journey, but 486,000 people live full time in an RV. That's double from 2021. And 73% of Americans say they would move to a rural property, van, RV, cabin. 75% if they're Gen Z or millennials. But based on industry information, 50 to 80% drop out before they even make it through just the planning phase. Most of the reports say that it was zoning problems, financial channels, and lifestyle mismatch. But as someone who's actually made this transition from city life to rural life, I can tell you there's a lot more to the story, and that's why 50 to 80% dropped out. My theory is people were not prepared for this lifestyle. So that's why on this upcoming episode of New Normal Big Life, we're diving into the 13 skills that you need to know before deciding to move low.
Yeah, I think that I can understand that. Um, Not feeling prepared or not being prepared would definitely be a deterrent to pursuing that kind of lifestyle. And, it's funny, I've always joked with friends about let's just move out to the woods and live, it seems like it's a way that we should be living. But I'm curious, like, for you specifically, what drew you to that lifestyle? Was it something you always wanted to do, or was it because of your situation, or?
Well, my family is from Queens, New York. I grew up, middle class, a 4,000 square foot house with a nice backyard in Queens, New York. But my parents both came from farming families. My dad from South Carolina, they were rice farmers, and my mom's family had a small hobby farm. They grew lots of things in Virginia, and that's where I spent most of my time when I wasn't in school, was out on the farm. And I really felt at peace and at home, even from my earliest 5-year-old memory of being out on the farm. So my thought was, one day when I'm a retired corporate executive, I will move to a farm or a cabin or a lake cottage. But I decided that I should move that plan up because city life never felt comfortable to me. There's just sensory overload, too much visually to take in, too much sound, too many people. I felt like my nervous system was always activated when I lived in a city. When I moved to, Queens is kind of a suburb of New York City, and parts of Queens where we lived, that felt like a suburb, but I moved to more of a traditional suburb. Then I moved to a suburb on the edge of a farming community, and now to deep into the woods. And I felt like with every move further away from the hustle and bustle of modern life, my nervous system calmed down, my overall health improved, and I just felt like I was even more creative. So I'm a writer by profession as well as a podcast host. And I felt like my creativity can flourish when I didn't have so much sensory overload.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I lived in Manhattan for a few years in New York. So I did 2 years there, and it was so overwhelming. I mean, at first it was exciting and there's so much to do, and I liked the walkability. But towards the end, I mean, I used to joke with people. Well, it's not even a joke. I would hear screaming outside my building all the time. Like,
Oh, oh
yeah,
my gosh.
I'm not sure what was going on down on the street, but there was, I mean, it's just, there's always constant noise in the city, especially, I mean, that's probably an extreme example, but my nervous system was shot by the end of my tenure, and it was only 2 years there. So,
Gosh.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't even go back to visit New York. The last time that I was there, I think it was 2013, and I felt like, I don't know, so rattled to my core from all of the sensory overload that I even cut my trip short.
I get it. I understand. I lived there with my brother. Well, not with my brother, but he moved as well. I lived in Chelsea. He was in the East Village. I was Chelsea and Chelsea. Um,
Very cute.
yeah. But it's also, I mean, it was just a lot of noise, right? There's a lot going on. But I also felt personally like I was concerned for my safety a lot. Like I was always on high alert. And there were even a few things that happened, nothing too bad, thankfully, but still, like on the subway where a guy's looks like he's like trying to punch me. Like that happened to me. My brother had a guy dragging a knife on the window on the subway. I mean, if you've been to New York, I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that.
I totally have, but I'm just horrified to be remembered of it. I mean, I
Sorry.
grew up in New York City, and so I completely understand where you're coming from, but I'm just so shocked to hear your personal experience because I'm so far removed from that now.
Mhm.
And I just feel like every person needs to decide where their ideal space living space or living community is. Because if you're not living in the right space for you, and rural living is not for everyone, it can really affect you in some really challenging ways.
Absolutely. I totally understand. And that's why I made the choice to move back home, which my home is Las Vegas, but I live on the outskirts near Red Rock. So
Nice.
that's it feels very safe to me where I'm located. But yeah, I can totally understand the nervous system dysregulation from living in an environment like that. And then obviously it sounds like the move to the woods was much better for your nervous system. So when did you start to kind of feel that and what did that look like?
Well, I was living in what I thought was a very safe, somewhat rural community. It was on the last dirt road in a northern Colorado community. I was about 30 minutes away from Rocky Mountain National Park with a beautiful view of the Rocky Mountain foothills. And my neighbor is a rancher, so beautiful cows all the time and horses, and on a dirt road, the last dirt road in town. And then I was taking a walk on that rural dirt road, and there were no homes around. And someone tried to grab me up off that dirt road. My neighbor came out with a high-powered rifle and chased him away. And I'm really grateful that wasn't the only incident. So lots of missing and disappeared women who were not in any sort of at-risk lifestyle, just people who had very normal schedules just went missing from our community. And people trying to break into your home in the middle of the night. We were very close to about an hour away from Denver. And so it just felt more and more that the big city problems were starting to become rural or small town problems too. And that was that, and the whole water problem in the Mountain West, hypoxia. So living at altitude, I lived at 6,000 feet and I recreated at 10,000 feet or above quite often. And I was developing hypoxia, and it's basically altitude sickness. It was creating this real challenge with being able to expel enough carbon dioxide and take in enough oxygen. And it was causing me to have health problems. So living in that rural location just wasn't a good fit, as well as the safety concerns. Now, my biggest safety concern is, wild animals, but I would much rather contend with the predictability of wild animals than wild humans, because human beings are very unpredictable people. And in my opinion, having been in countries where there have been a complete collapse in society, I'd much rather take my chances with the animals than humans.
Have you seen that on social media that there's like a trend where they say, would you rather be alone in the woods with a bear or another man?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'd rather be alone in the woods with my man
Yeah.
because he's awesome.
Yeah.
He did 2 tours kicking indoors with the Marine Corps in Iraq, so I feel very safe between his skills and mine. But also, he's a very kind person. He used to volunteer teaching children with autism how to kayak and safety boating for blind kayakers and veterans and people of color learning to kayak and paddleboard. So he's a really good guy.
No, I know. It's not every man, of course, right? But it's just the
Yeah.
idea of animal versus a human. There's danger in both, but perhaps more cruelty with a human.
Humans are less predictable than animals. That's been scientifically proven. And just from real world experience, I would agree with that.
It's funny that you brought that up because I was going to ask, what does your safety feel like in the way that you're living now? Because I love the outdoors and I love going hiking. And actually, when I lived in New York City, I would go upstate all the time because I was always craving that nature and silence. But I would go hiking up there and there weren't that many people on the trails for some reason. I don't know. Here, there's always tons of people, but whenever there aren't people on the trail with me, I get a little nervous. And there were also signs everywhere that were like, look out for bears. So was just very a nervous person.
You know, that is a thing, but you know, that's one of the skills that I'll talk about later,
Okay.
but a skill to have. Actually, I don't really cover safety as a skill. That's a whole separate topic,
Yes.
but I can just share here now. Safety is a concern everywhere you live. When you live rural, your safety challenges are different. For example, weather is an extreme concern when you live very rural. Just a simple thing like breaking your leg or having a respiratory infection that could lead to breathing trouble is a very real concern because you're so far from help. So I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but first aid safety, physical safety are both things that you should consider. And I am very skilled at self-protection, so I don't have that concern, but I would suggest anybody, no matter where you live, whether it's in a city or rural, that you learn self-protection and self-awareness. The most critical thing is seeing danger when it happens, and you can't see it if you're not being aware. If your head is not on swivel, looking around your surroundings at all time, not with your head in your phone, using reflective surfaces to see who might be following you or to see if someone is dangerously close. I personally don't let strangers in most settings get close enough to me to touch me. Once they're close enough to touch you, they're close enough to harm you. And then I also carry a knife with me when I'm in the woods, and my dog is very protective. I never taught her this, but when someone tries to get too close, she automatically tries to go for their jugular. So I keep her on a leash. But she's just very protective. She's actually a certified service dog, and I've never given her any kind of self-protection training other than service dogs are trained to watch your back. So they're trained to go under your chair, watch your back, and they'll give you a little nudge when they hear or see something. You can just say, I've got it. That way, as a person with post-traumatic stress, you're not startled by every little thing that comes up behind you because your dog is watching it. But just on her own, she is an American dingo. I mean, you know, she has those instincts naturally and they haven't been bred out of her, but she is very protective.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like she really loves you too.
I love her too.
I think those are some practical tips for safety in the woods or really anywhere, right? So paint me a picture of what your life looks like now.
So early in the morning, my dog loves to go out early. That's her thing. So I accommodate. She'll be 15, so I better be nice to her, right? And we go out in the morning, we see the sunrise, get some fresh air, take in some vitamin D through our skin and eyes year round. That resets my circadian rhythms. I drink some water. I have like a special water that I drink in the morning to rejuvenate myself and hydrate myself and get my brain prepared for the day. It's an electrolyte drink that I make at home with lemon, sea salt, filtered water, and methylene blue. And it's done great for my brain injury. So that's sort of my first thing. I do that. I wait an hour to allow my digestive system to just run through its cycle, and then I'll have coffee and sit down to write. But at 3 p.m., if my office door is not closed, my dog says, let's go. It's time to go hiking. And we take a hike every day at around 3 o'clock. I sometimes have to change it for my work schedule, but that's pretty much our routine, followed by most nights, Matt grills or smokes or cooks something on the griddle outdoors. We do that year round. So we'll have campfires. And we have a few friends who live by. I like to call the ladies in the group my Northwoods Women Club. And we get together and do things. You have to be very intentional about making friends here because you don't casually see people. So you have to make plans in advance and get together. And it's a lot of fun. I don't ever feel lonely. And Matt and I did a test last winter during a blizzard. We spent 30 days in the cabin. I mean, just not leaving the property at all, not going into town for supplies to see how long we could survive without wanting to kick one of us out of the cabin or run out of food or whatever. And we did lose power during that time. So we relied on the solar system that I designed, and it worked. So yeah, it's all good.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful life. It sounds like you have the freedom and flexibility to live a life that really serves you well. And it's good to know that you're not lonely, because I can imagine that would also be a possible deterrent, right, for people to pursue that lifestyle.
Yes, a lot of people don't consider the fact that they may need more human contact than they think. So, for example, I am an ambivert. So I'm naturally introverted and I'm naturally extroverted. I would say that I lean more towards being an introvert because I do recharge by being quiet, alone, and going inward. But some people are natural extroverts and they need a lot of human contact. They recharge by being together with other people. So you really have to know who you are and what you need to feel okay. So, for example, if you don't spend enough time around human beings, you can survive, but you won't thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So, humans are pack animals. We can do okay solo, but we thrive when we're together in a pack. And so my normal pack is Matt, my dog Phoebe, and me. But we do get lots of visitors from friends and family because we live in vacation land. It's literally called vacation land. So they like to come to the cabin year round and hang out. And then, of course, we're intentional about making friends. And we don't go out to eat very often, but we try to get together and go out to eat with some family who live nearby at least once a month. We like to call it Sunday dinner. We usually go to their cabin, or they'll come to our cabin, or we might get all dressed up and go to a supper club.
Okay. Yeah. How far is another cabin?
About a quarter mile.
Okay.
So yelling distance.
Yeah. Okay. Not bad. Not
Actually,
bad.
no, I think now that I'm thinking about it, it's maybe slightly more than a quarter mile.
Okay. I was imagining like an hour's drive, but no, you
No,
have.
not that rural.
Okay. Okay.
Now, town is an hour's drive, but
Okay.
the next human being. So I don't even live in a town. I live in a census zone because there are so few people. So the next human contact is a little more than a quarter mile away. But if you need any kind of services, you're at least an hour or more away.
Okay.
So like an ambulance, a grocery store, home improvement store.
So if people wanted to pursue this lifestyle and they're scared of feeling lonely or not having contact with others, what advice would you give them?
Well, I'm coming up with I have come up with, I haven't published the episode yet, but I've come up with 13 skills that you should have. And one of the things that I ask you to start with is take the new normal big life journey. And what that does is help you think through your reasons for wanting to move, your personality, the kinds of things that you need in your life, the characteristics of the people you need to have around you, healthcare concerns and challenges, all of the things that you need to think about before you make the move. We thought we were extremely prepared. And if I were grading our preparedness to live this role, I would give us an A minus. And the reason I say A minus is because once we got here, there were some things we had to learn. And I'm not sure that you can learn unless you learn them from someone who's already done it.
Mhm. So what were the things that I mean, it sounds like both you and your husband had a lot of experience that you could apply to this, right? Does that?
We did because we are both avid outdoors people. We're both sponsored adventure sports athletes. We both take other people through volunteer work into adventures. And I also work in the outdoor industry as a writer. So we're very immersed in this industry. In fact, while most people were afraid to leave their homes during COVID, guess where I was? I was on the Frank Church River of No Return in Salmon, Idaho, with 9 friends living out of a raft for a week, enjoying life.
It sounds like you guys were very prepared. And maybe most people are not that way. I'm not sure that are pursuing this lifestyle.
I
But
believe that most people, if we were at, let's say, 95% prepared, I think most people are more at like 55% prepared. And I've met people who have moved rural, and I am shocked by how unprepared they were to
oh,
live
yeah.
here.
Yeah, I feel like I would be like 10% prepared.
But
I,
that's okay. Everything is a learning curve.
yeah.
It- I couldn't stand up on my paddleboard and just go down the river, the first time. I had to learn it, right? So
Yeah.
everything's a learning curve. And thankfully, there are podcasts and books that you can turn to find out information or even ask questions. I love answering questions for people. I want people who truly feel like living rural would level up their lives and their health to be able to do it. And if I can help them pursue that dream, I'd love it.
And if I were to pursue this lifestyle, I would prepare. I would learn and read information like you're providing to prepare myself for that. But I'm curious with, like you said, you gave yourself an A minus, but what were some of the lessons that you learned after pursuing it?
Well, so I am a naturally courteous person, and I used to be a certified call center manager. So customer service is kind of in my nature. So when I'm talking to a contractor or their staff, I'm very courteous, but I didn't realize that people operate differently. They have different motivators here. So if you're the sort of person who likes to throw around your weight, I am this person, or I have this title, or I work here, or I know these people, so you need to expedite my work for me. That doesn't fly in rural locations. In fact, that would work in the opposite of what you want. So, learning to have good communication with people and good negotiation skills, being polite goes a long way. Letting people know that you are a full time local person, not a part time or cabiner, they like to say, goes a long way. And rightly so, because if, for example, if you're living here full time and a contractor has you on their list of clients to get to, they will prioritize you because, for example, if you need your chimney swept, you can't wait until spring to have it done. You live here year round, you need your backup heating source immediately. So those kinds of things you won't really know until you move to a rural place.
It sounds like maybe the social customs can be a little bit different than city living.
Yes, but here's sort of the rule of thumb. What I notice is the social customs in rural locations are more like how they were, say, in the, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, or even 80s. By the 90s, I think in most Western cultures, especially in the United States, we became less formal. We didn't use our please and thank yous. And people, I think, started to adopt a more of a bullying mentality, like, let me speak to your manager. What do you mean you can't deliver my household goods until 6 months from now, or 3 months from now, or 2 months? I mean, we had to wait a month, and that was the moving company bumping us up on the schedule because they realized we were moving to the ice belt and we really needed to have like all of our warm clothes and winter boots and things like that. And we couldn't wait 8 weeks instead of 4 weeks. So they made that accommodation for us. But it was because I was polite, I was patient, I didn't demand to speak to a manager. Their schedule is their schedule, and talking to a manager really can't change that.
Yeah.
But what I did was calmly and succinctly explained our situation, and they were happy to accommodate.
It sounds like you've learned a lot from living there and you have a lot to share. And I know you have your episode coming up with the 13 skills. I know we don't need to get into all of them because people should go listen to your episode. But what would you say are the top skills or tools that you would give someone?
Oh, I love this question. I can give you off the top of my head my top picks. Number one is you're probably going to end up having to compete for the property you want. So, really understanding real estate negotiation skills, they're very different from general business skills. If you have a skilled realtor, they can walk you through that, but not every realtor knows how to do that. The other thing is things are way more expensive than you think. So the cost of materials were 3 times what we priced out at the start of our journey and until we moved. So over a 90-day period, prices had gone up even more than we anticipated. So your money for getting your cabin the way you want it, customized like ours, will go not as far as you think. Learn basic first aid skills, learn how to use, well, I would say buy a collection of tools and learn how to use them, the kinds of tools you'll need on a rural property, like how to use a snowblower or a chainsaw. And everyone needs to know how to do these things, learn how to start and maintain a fire and how to be safe with fire. So, for example, Matt is a genius with wood. I mean, he can tell you if you want a slow burning fire or a really hot, high heat fire, what wood to use, what wood is good for indoors or outdoors. I had to learn all of those things, and I learned them just in time for a blizzard to set in. We lost power for a week. And then Matt got very sick one day on the blizzard and he couldn't lift his head off the bed, off the pillow. And he slept the entire day. I had to wake him up for meals. But if I didn't know how to maintain a fire, how to get water, get snow, melt it, and put it into the toilet tank to flush, how to filter water, how to cook on a wood burning stove or a camp stove, if I didn't know all those skills, snow blowing skills, we would have been trapped. So I didn't know if I would have to get him to an emergency room. So I prepared the Bronco. I got it all cleaned off and warmed up and de-iced in case we had to go. I used the snowblower so that we could get off the property and source wood and made meals and all of the things. And one, I'm really proud of that, of all of those skills. Oh, and I already had first aid skills. So, because I was a medic, that pride and sense of accomplishment that translates into every aspect of your life, including work. So if you're a person that suffers from feeling like you have imposter syndrome, when you're developing outdoor skills, even like something as simple as learning to fish or kayak, and you're able to say, I did that, that translates into the rest of your life and it really boosts your self-esteem overall.
I can absolutely see being able, I mean, essentially to survive on your own, right? I can see that would produce enhanced self-esteem, confidence in yourself. So tell me about that. What changes did you see when you did that?
When I changes in myself,
Yeah, I mean, when you moved out there and you were learning how to build a fire and knowing to put the snow in the toilet, did you see a change in your own self-esteem?
I did. So, as a person with a hidden disability, from my brain injury and my spinal cord injury, but more so from my brain injury, you can't see all of the challenges that I have, right? So, for example, before I discovered archery, or before my occupational therapist told me about archery and whitewater kayaking, I struggled with focus, and archery helped me with focus and word recall and memory. So I couldn't even have this conversation until I got into archery. And then whitewater kayaking helped me to rebuild my musculoskeletal system, and that helped me to not need a walker. So every step that I've taken toward this more rural lifestyle has improved my mental health, physical health, emotional health, and self confidence. And even though I have a lot of innate, I was born with a lot of self confidence, sometimes the brain injury makes me feel less confident because I don't always have control of what my brain is deciding to do.
I just think it's so inspiring to hear your story and everything that you've accomplished. And I can just imagine that this could be a really great way for some people to live if it's something that interests them, and a way to build that self esteem and confidence. Because even when you're speaking, I'm like, okay, if I were to pursue this, I would need to know how to build, like, I don't know how to build a fire. I don't know first aid. I mean, I can put a band-aid on my stepson, but like, something were to happen. So if someone's like an absolute beginner, like let's take me, for example, because I'm even feeling overwhelmed hearing all of these things you need to learn, where would they start? What would be your advice if they're feeling overwhelmed with everything that they have to learn?
Well, that's why I created this episode, and it's going to be a series of episodes because I realized there's not one book that I could point someone to and say, read this book and you're going to be prepared. I read, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 dozen books. When I wanted to ensure that we always have power, I had to read 4 books and learn all about how electricity works, how solar energy works, how solar generators work, how generators in general work. And then I designed a system, hired a contractor to do the things that are required to be done by a certified electrician by law. The rest we did ourselves, and it works. so, so I realized that the average person would spend, like I did, I spent from 2018 to 2023 on this journey. I want to shortcut that for you. That's one of the goals I had with my YouTube channel, New Normal Big Life, and also New Normal Big Life podcast and nnbl.blog, is that you can download step by step. So you want to learn how to kayak, or you want to learn how to fish, or you want to learn how to live rural. You want to learn more about natural medicine and integrative medicine. You've got step-by-step plans from experts. You have step-by-step plans from my personal research. And the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. The best way to start doing something new with your life is one step at a time.
That makes sense. That is practical advice. I'm just thinking, I guess it's like if I could start with a fire, start there and then keep adding
You know,
on.
where an excellent way to get started with trying on living rural is to just start camping. And if you don't own any camping gear today, but if you just take some blankets and you go car camping before winter sets in and just experience that, or borrow a tent or rent one, just start experiencing camping, cooking meals, setting up your campsite, knowing about sanitation and keeping your groover or your campsite away from an outhouse or from your groover. That's where you go in the woods and you
Okay.
pack that out with you in super rural locations where there's no restrooms. But just starting to practice living more self-reliantly as a weekend experience or a week-long experience, that gives you a taste of it. And also it will start to let you know whether you think you're going to love it or hate it. And that's a
Yeah.
really good way also to get to know the person or people that you might want to live rural with, because that's very important. In fact, a lot of people don't realize that this decision to move rural breaks a lot of people up. It breaks up marriages, it breaks up engagements. And I personally know friends who spent time, money, and effort to build out a van or an RV or a tiny home or refurbish a home. And then when it came time to move in, one of the partners said, I don't really want to live like this, and I'm breaking up with you. And I also know a lot of people who own beautiful luxury cabins and their husbands or wives hate it and they don't go to the cabin with them.
Why do you think the relationship doesn't make it? Is it just that they decide they don't want that lifestyle anymore? Or is it another piece to it?
I think with most people, the stress of this endeavor of moving rural, of living in a way that is more self-reliant and fewer services, that it doesn't really hit home until you're about to do
Mhm.
it. And it's usually when someone decide or someone realizes that, oh my goodness, I really am going to live in this smaller place with this one person, or some people do it as a family, like multiple generations get together and build out on a property. And then you realize that, we just don't work as well together as we thought, but you keep going and keep going instead of when you first get started and you realize, I don't really like this person, and liking someone and loving someone are two different things. I find that people realize they don't like who they're partnered with or who they might live with. If, say, you're going to have a roommate situation, you realize once the two of you are put under stress conditions, you don't really like them.
Mhm.
And rather than acknowledging that and working on it or ending things sooner, they keep going. They think it's going to get better, and it just gets worse.
The transition into that lifestyle, I'm sure, is a stressor in many ways. It's also just a transition. Anytime we have huge life transitions, there is a lot that comes along with that. And I can see how that might be like a make it or break it situation for certain relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it brought us closer together, though. We were already close. Like, our friends would say that we're such a great unit because we camp and recreate with friends on a regular basis. And a lot of times we are setting up our little piece of camp, our tent and our cook stations, and we move like a dance, and we hardly even have to talk. And people are very envious of that, but that's sort of how our relationship is anyway. But the other thing that I was thinking of is there are a lot of positives to living in this cozy little cabin in the woods, though.
Why don't you tell me about those?
Well, first off, it is sort of like the millennial dream to live in a cozy cabin in the woods, right? So that's one thing. But having that warm fire going indoors or outdoors, it I live a big life, but it's a simple life. So the kinds of things that I do, like whitewater kayaking, a river at flood stage conditions in Colorado, is something that most of the public will never ever do and won't ever be able to develop the skills to do. But I can experience that. So my life is bigger than most people, but it's also very simple in that I don't have to keep up with the Joneses. I get to just be myself. My style is my style. I don't worry about what's trending, what other people are doing. I worry about what feels good, what's functional, what feels cozy. And I'm actually saving money because I don't go out a lot and I don't shop a lot. Not that I really did much of that before, because I was always an outdoors woman and sort of focusing my money on those things. But the cozy life of just being surrounded by friends and family who are always so excited to come visit you, that it feels really rich. And one of the skills that I encourage people to develop is the ability to maintain long distance relationships, because that is a skill. It's difficult and you have to be intentional about it.
Well, it certainly does sound like a cozy life. And it also sounds like one that's authentic to who you are.
It really is. And if you'll notice behind me in our cabin, we use elements from the outdoors, like the planter with the air plants over my shoulder. And, the stained glass is a gift from a family member who made it just for me. And there are items from my parents' home, like the mirror. They're no longer with us. And so, this is our real life. This is how we live every day. And I feel really blessed to just wake up every day and go to bed every night feeling safe and comfortable, not wealthy, but just comfortable. And living this smaller footprint in the world is very budget friendly. So you spend a lot to get here, but then once you're here, it's very economical way to live.
Well, we've talked about a lot, but just before we wrap up, I have maybe two more questions for you. My first, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want the listeners to know?
I hope they'll come and learn how to plan your journey into your new normal and create the biggest life you can dream. And you can listen in. I think this episode will drop sometime in late November, early December. So you'll have the links to my socials, newsletter, and podcast to learn how to connect with us and figure out how to start your journey into the woods, into your dream cozy life. And yeah, I just would encourage you to pursue the dream. And as you go through your journey of creating this new life for yourself, you might decide that, this really isn't for me. But even then, you'll come out the other side knowing yourself better.
It's made me curious, so I'm at least going to look into it.
All right. Oh, I'm excited for you.
And then I always like to ask, what's making you cozy this week?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked me that. So I bought this sweater a few weeks ago, and it's just super soft and luxurious. And I love that it brings nature into my indoor space. And this week, my sweater is making me cozy. And I know that's a little thing, but I don't spend a lot of money on stuff. So, just spending a little money on myself to have something nice and warm and cozy for the fall means a lot to me because I don't shop often.
I have a lot of sweaters, and a good sweater is wonderful.
It really is.
It is. What's making me cozy this week is that I'm in Vegas. So the weather is usually hot, but it's starting to get cold. We actually have, it's a Vegas thing where everyone agrees on Halloween is when we switch into winter. It always happens on that day for some reason, but it's still inching its way down. It's getting a little bit colder, and we've had the fireplace going outside. But now, after this episode, and maybe this weekend, I'm going to try and make my own fire in the backyard.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
That's great.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing. You have so much wonderful advice and tips and tricks and tools, and I'm sure the listeners can benefit a lot from listening to that episode that you've been mentioning. So I will link your podcast and your blog and your socials in the show notes for anyone who wants to go check out all of Antoinette's lovely stuff. And I'll put mine, of course, in the show notes as well. But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Antoinette.
Thank you so much, Chelsea, for letting me have this cozy conversation with you.
We'll talk to you next week. Stay cozy. Bye.